Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about the properties of water, what make it so very important for biology and life as we know it. So the basic structure of water is that it's composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. I'm going to keep this color coding so you can sort of follow on when I'm going here. So here's our water molecule. We've got this very large oxygen atom, and then of course it's got 2 hydrogen atoms attached to each one of it. Here you can see a slightly more accurate depiction of it, though oxygen of course is much larger. This is where we get the formula H2O. The hydrogen atoms have a partially positive charge on each one of them. This means that the oxygen atom has a partially negative charge. Oxygen just happens to be pulling harder and harder on the electrons, which have a negative charge, so overall there's more of a negative electron charge over the oxygen and more of a positive charge around the hydrogens. The end result, and you should definitely draw this in your notes, is where you get H2O with a positive charge here and a negative charge there. To be more accurate, it's a partial negative and a partial positive, so you might sometimes see it denoted with this lowercase delta there. But overall, we have a very large, slightly negative oxygen and 2 much smaller, partially positive hydrogens on the bottom there. We call this a polar molecule because a polar molecule is one where the charges are separated. One molecule, multiple charges. Here you can see we have 2 polar bears and like some water molecules in the polar, you get it. Now, we also have this thing called a hydrogen bond. You have a positive charge on one water molecule that's attracted to a negative charge on a different one, and they form a weak bond called a hydrogen bond. Here's one water molecule, there's another water molecule, and you'll notice this partial positive here is going to that partial negative there. It's a very, very weak bond, but it is strong enough to make a difference. So here's one water molecule, and the positive hydrogen, and the negative oxygen. And remember, it's not attracted to itself, it's attracted to a different water molecule's oxygen or hydrogen. Now, if you look at a molecule right here in a more accurate representation, you can see the partial positives and partial negatives. One water molecule is actually forming a bond with 4 other water molecules. This is important, as we'll see. So again, one water molecule forming a partial weak hydrogen bond with up to 4 other water molecules at the same time. These many weak bonds actually build together, they multiply to make water hold very, very tightly against itself. We call this cohesion. And the fact that water binds so tightly to itself means that it's capable of absorbing a huge amount of heat. This is why water takes so long to heat up or cool down. We would say it has a lot of heat capacity, all because of these up to 4 hydrogen bonds between each water molecule and the ones around it. Now, cohesion, as a general term, that's an attraction between molecules of the same substance. As I just mentioned, water is extremely cohesive because each one is going to be forming a bond to up to 4 other molecules. Here you can see I have my picture here with 4 other water molecules there. We would call this cohesion between all of them. Adhesion is different. Cohesion is between the same. Adhesion is to be between different substances. There you can see this picture right here. Cohesion, 2 identical things. Water sticking to itself. Adhesion is going to be different. Water is going to be sticking to a leaf. Water is going to be sticking to glass, something else here. If you put water inside a glass, like a graduated cylinder, you create this little meniscus in a graduated cylinder. That sort of little arc that we have right there. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens because we have a very strong adhesion between the water and the glass. So here's my water molecules. Of course, cohesion is holding them together, but they're also adhering, adhesion, to the walls of it. And this causes them to sort of climb up the sides of that very thin tube. This is what capillary action is. It's how water adheres to the sides of a narrow tube and climbs upward against the force of gravity. The thinner the tube is, the more of an adhesive force there is between the water and the glass. This is also how trees are going to pull water up from their roots all the way up to the very, very tippy tops of their leaves. They're using capillary action. Water is going to stick to both the wood and itself in those very thin tubes and climb up. The thinner the tube, the higher it's going to climb. That's capillary action. Lastly, we need to talk about the chemistry term pH. pH you usually see when they're talking about water. Is this water solution, is it more an acid or is it more of a base? And everything here has to do with this H plus there, these hydrogen ions. The pH scale goes from 0 to 14 with 7 being neutral. This is the basic setup. I'm not going to ask you a lot of stuff, but you should know that if the pH is less than 7, we're going to call that an acid. And it has lots of these H plus or hydrogen ions there, a lot more so than the OH or the hydroxide ions. So acids are going to be on the low end and bases are going to be on the other end. So if I looked at this solution here, I have lots of these H plus ions, not a lot of these OH ions. That's going to tell me that's an acid. So greater than 7, we're going to be looking at bases, lots of the OH or the hydroxide ions. If I was to look at this solution here and see, whoa, we got lots of these OH and just a couple of these H pluses, now we know that's going to be a base. pH always greater than 7, up to 14. Now, of course, if we have a pH of 7, that's neutral. This is where both that OH and the H plus ions are going to be equal in concentration. Pure water, as we were just talking about, is going to be neutral exactly at a pH of 7. So think of it almost alphabetically. You got acid, you got base, and then neutral in the middle. I just always think of it as A, B, and then of course the middle is going to be neutral, a pH of 7.